And I'm here with Steve Loyd, the founder of NION. Steve, welcome to the Optimal Performance Podcast.
Thank you, Sean. I like being here.
This is going to be so good. You've already blown my mind twice here, even before we turn the record button on. You know, I think I want to start slow with people. I want to just sort of present them with this idea because I thought I knew a lot about grounding and its effects and its benefits and the feeling. And there's lots and lots of research out there when it comes to grounding. And I think everybody thinks about barefoot on the ground or grounding your bed frame or, using a grounding mat. So when I learned about Nion as a beverage, as a consumable for grounding, I was like, well, I don't know anything. So maybe if you could set this up by talking about the sort of contrasting sort of typical physical grounding versus your product.
Sure. And we really backed into this, Sean. We didn't recognize initially that that's what we were doing. Our first tests, and we definitely wanted to deliver a negative electromotive potential, a negative ion to the human body, but we didn't equate it to grounding. What we equated it to was the natural negative charge of different elements, different organs and cells, and even components of cells that have to be maintained for us to maintain our high energy levels and our health. And we had this initial trial with two older athletes. And athletes will do almost anything to up their performance. And so we tested them without any Nion. And professional athletes, semi-pro athletes, they tested really well. They're happy. We put them into another test, taking one level of Nion, and their performance increased so dramatically, almost doubled their time to exhaustion, that we said, wow, this is amazing. Maybe we should double the dose. Okay. And they doubled their performance again. Now,
Wow.
this was done at a medical research lab monitored by a medical doctor. And she, one, didn't believe it. Two, the results were so phenomenal that she couldn't fathom why it would work that way. And so she suggested we go to an Olympic testing lab in Montana State to really get detailed physiological evidence to support this negative charge and its improvement in the overall physiology of the body and how it functions and how it maintains its health and other elements like that. And so that took us down the path. Only later did we find that there is a huge tribe that recognizes the importance of these negative ions being part of your body. You know how it is, Sean, when you are sort of walking through the wilderness and you think you found something, and then you come to a clearing and you find out there's a lot of people already there.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been there. So what were you testing for when how did you measure an athlete's doublage of output?
Well, what we they were cyclists. They were competitive cyclists, and so we measured what was their how long could they generate 400 watts of electric power on their cycle, and in each case they would generate it until they just couldn't do the muscle movement anymore, and they couldn't maintain the 400 watts, and that was when we called time to exhaustion. In one case, they would double the time to exhaustion if they're getting a regular dose of about 3 grams of Nion 7 days prior to starting the trial. So, in other words, taking the product for 7 days seemed to have a tremendous benefit to their overall uh, ability to exercise, produce ATP at the mitochondrial level, we later find out. But of course, then we decide to double the dose. And
Yeah.
doggone, if these guys don't generate double the output, though it led us to scratch our head and decide we needed to really focus on this carefully, figure out what was going on. And we took it to the Food and Drug Administration. They determined it was safe by all the standards. We had the cytotoxicity trials, where you introduce it to cell cultures. And then we made all the products out of recognized as safe ingredients. And so the Food and Drug Administration said, whoa, you guys have got something here, but it ain't a drug. So, have at it as a food. So we introduced it as a food then.
It is a staggering product, and the reason why I say that so boldly is because there are lots of products that I take, that people take, where it's like, I know this is good for me, I'm going to take it. It seems to help this, it seems to help that, sleep or strength or cognitive and performance and stuff like that. And it's like, well, it's got good ingredients, so it should probably work. But this product specifically, which is a powder that you put in water and drink, I've been using for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu,
Mm.
and I train really hard. And so what I do is I take it as a pre-workout, and then I'll take it as a during workout. So we get 2 water breaks throughout the 90-minute training session, and I'm like pouring sweat, breathing hard, pushing myself to almost puking. Like last night, almost puked. And I found that my ability to keep up my exertion, keep
Mm.
the same level of strength, keep the same level of lung capacity, keep the same level of output, where other guys who are, almost half my age are, kind of bonking at,
Mm.
3 or 4 minutes of a 6 minute round, and I'm continuing on. And it's like, damn, this stuff, I can actually feel it working. I can actually feel it making me a better athlete. So I can firsthand attest to that. And I know you get sick of hearing that, but you probably hear that all the time
Well,
with
something
users.
else you might find, Sean, so when we tested these athletes, they, they would walk out of the lab with wobbly knees. They'd work so hard that they were just kind of wobbling as they walked out. We asked them to come back to the lab the next day and see if they could leg press 450 pounds, and how many times could they do that. And so when they came back the first time after having no NION, they were just maybe I could get one, and that was it. When they were taking NION the next day, it was like they hadn't worked out at all. They were just
Mm.
they were fully recovered, and the more NION they took, the greater the recovery, the more leg presses they could do the next day. It just that was another part that just didn't equate. And then when we tested the lactic acid levels in their blood, the lactic acid had cleared very dramatically when you were taking NION, which later we learned was an indication that the mitochondria are functioning at a higher level when we're taking NION.
Yeah, I definitely want to get into some of the studies, because you put your money where your mouth is. You're writing checks that you can cash, going out and doing the studies and showing, these connections through the study. So I definitely want to get to that. But I do want to go back to this idea of the distinction between like barefoot on a beach grounding and consuming a thing that does the same thing or something similar.
Right. Well, and I'm a big fan of being outdoors and enjoying the outdoors. Uh, Walking on the beach with family, barefoot, it really feels good. The thing is that the resistance at the skin is fairly high, and so the negative electric potential you can absorb through your skin is fairly limited because you have high resistance with the skin within the body, in the intestinal tract, in the esophagus. The electromotive resistance is almost none. So you get a very strong reception of this electromotive potential when it comes inside your body. That's one piece. And Our
Can I
calculations,
can I pause you there? Don't
sure.
don't forget that the calculations. Can you explain what electromotive potential means?
Oh, yeah. I mean, so it's like voltage. So the Earth has a negative electromotive potential, a negative voltage, and so does NION. It has about 330 millivolts of electromotive potential. That's voltage. That's the ability, or maybe it's analogy to water pressure. The water pressure, the energy that's behind that water to come out of the hose, that's like voltage, and that's a standard, electromagnetic measure that you should understand as one of the benefits of earthing. The earth has a strong electromotive potential, um, because it is such a massive uh, quality around you. The NION granules are small, but they are in direct contact with your interior, and so they have a huge impact on your overall health. And its impact, I think, is about 11 or 12 hours equivalency of walking on the beach.
Whoa.
Just one of those packets. And so that's how it equates to me to recognize grounding is, I mean, ever since we were single cell organisms 1.8 billion years ago, we have been in this environment with a negative electric charge on the Earth's surface and in the oceans. And we need that. Our body needs that. And we've cut ourselves off from it. And that's the whole earthing movement, is get your feet back on the ground, get your the soles of your shoes, away from the rubber, and really be in contact with the earth so we can get the electromotive charge that's coming from the earth. And if you can't get that, if you live in a high rise, or if your lifestyle just doesn't allow that, you might take a NION instead and get the equivalence of being out in the woods for 11 hours or so.
Incredible. Yeah, this is at the heart of what I love and what I continue to harp on through this podcast and the sort of biohacking movement as a whole is biohacking to me, the way that I define biohacking is controlling what goes in you, on you, and around you for optimal performance. And that when you think about it that way, it's like, what am I consuming? What's on my skin? And then what am I being exposed to as far as things that I can't see, like light and EMF? And so that's how I define it. But the best biohacking products, whether it be red light, mouth
Mm.
guards, or, whatever, NION, is that it brings us back to a more primal state that allows for homeostasis. We like you said, we evolved barefoot, ass out in the air with the sun shining on us, and so that's all we knew. And as we age and as modernity continues to carry forward, we are getting more rubber soled shoes. We're just getting disconnected from that. So
Yeah,
this is high tech consumable that's actually taking us back.
it is. And when you talk about returning to homeostasis, I oftentimes see that we are going to biohack our way to much longer lifespan, much longer health span. Uh, I'm personally convinced, after all the research, that we can achieve a 200-year life expectancy, and that's a health span, not just gutting it out until the end. I mean, it's fully engaged and involved in all aspects of life and living, and it's really possible for us with what we've learned and how we are reconnecting, I think, to some of our very, very fundamental requirements for life. And the fact that we look, or that medicine oftentimes looks at us as very material beings, where we just have these molecules that bump into each other randomly and stuff, and kind of ignore some of the other energetic aspects of life. We miss such a big, big part of who we are and who we can be. But if we see ourselves more energetically, we can embrace a much longer, healthier lifespan. And that's one of the objectives that we have. We think that the people who are being born now can easily achieve 125-year life expectancy of full, vibrant health with just what we know now today. And that's changing all of us in very dramatic ways. We just have to think differently. Like my career, I've had 4 major careers in my life. I know my dad, he had one career. And I could imagine if we're going to have long, long lives, we could have multiple careers and very, very great stories to tell at the end of our lives. So
I
that's one of our perspectives here too.
Yeah, well, I love it when smart gals and guys like yourself talk like that, because the wisdom and the experience that you have with patents and law and acceptance to medical school and all of that, like when you could cite Ray Kurzweil or Dave Asprey about their sort of goals for health span too. It's hard to wrap your brain around, but I get tingles, I get goosebumps when guys like you talk about living to 125, 200 years old. And yeah, well, we have so many places to go in this conversation. I don't know how recently you did this, but recently you did a 10-day water fast, and you were doing some studies throughout that, and you were taking NION in that 10-day water fast. And I'm big on this right now for a couple of reasons. Number one, the more that I learn about what the gut microbiome needs in order to be healthy and strong, the boost in immunity, the longevity aspects of calorie restriction, um, just the benefits of autophagy are just insane. And so, I did a
Mhm.
3-day water fast recently and took NION, kind of didn't really connect the dots, but was taking it during. I was taking some amino acids and some NION, and water and coffee because I'm a caffeine addict. But you recently did a 10-day water fast and you were talking about it and posting about it. Please tell us why and how and the connection with NION during that phase.
Yeah, Sean, we talked about how I have this tendency to do tangential things, and one of the tangential things I did was I made a Christmas gift to my wife of a 10-day water fast.
Oh yeah, I bet that was. She's like,
Big.
"Thanks, honey."
We have some rules to Christmas giving now. So we trundled off to Northern California and the True North Health Center, so we could have medically supervised water fasts. And they checked us in, looked at our previous dietary outline, determined that we could do a water fast, and began to prepare us where we would only have water uh, and for 7 days, and then we would start to come out of that fast by being introduced to raw foods. And it was a tremendous experience. Now, one of my concerns, of course, is that when you enter autophagy, ketosis, takes over as your primary metabolic process. And so the keto flu can be a major headache for people. And it's good because it helps flush all the toxins out and it changes your metabolic processes and what. But I wasn't really looking forward to that part. Neither was my wife. And so we instituted NION as part of our regimen. The only thing we would take along with the water was NION, about 3 grams a day. And we had zero zero keto flu. It was actually a very pleasant experience. We One of the things they do at True North Health is they have a television channel that talks about how to make food that's really good for you to eat.
Oh, torture.
If you're not eating, all of a sudden you're tuning into that channel. But it did sort of cleanse our mind about thinking about food. And so we're eating, I think, a much more raw based diet. We feel terrific. We did lose some weight, and the weight has stayed off. I tend to be fairly athletic anyway. And so I think my muscle mass has improved some, and the mental clarity was just phenomenal from the experience. I really enjoyed it, and so it's not going to be a Christmas gift this year, but Gail and I are going to go again in January.
Nice. So how did NION help enhance or support you during that 10-day fast? Because in my
Yeah.
experience in the past, when I've done 3-day water fast, and I'd done like three before this last one, and I wasn't really supplementing with any electrolytes. I wasn't supplementing with any amino acids. It was Topo Chico and Gerolsteiner, mineral water, hardcore, and that was it. And it was a struggle. Like halfway through day two, I was pretty miserable, and I've experienced ketosis before,
Mm-hmm.
but this time it was super easy. And I feel like the combination of the amino acids that I take that are super high quality and NION, I took as directed, and I felt like it could have gone another 3 days. I felt like 10 would be pretty easy to do. So tell me how specifically NION supported you during that process.
Yeah, my takeaway is that NION was very, very helpful for two reasons. One was that the water fast was accompanied by distilled water. And so, distilled water does flush out the toxins big time. And that would also mean that you're going to have electrolyte depletion along the
Right.
way. So, and I do know that the quality of the minerals in NION are superb. They're basically pharmaceutical grade, uh, nothing but the pure stuff is those my minerals, and replacing those electrolytes really, I think, were a major improvement in my overall ability to flush out toxins and replace them with good, clean electrolytes.
Interesting.
That was one part of it, and the other part of it is that um, as you go through autophagy, I think it does supercharge the mitochondria. And there's studies about this. The mitochondria actually have a major role in autophagy and also mitophagy, which is the replacement of the mitochondria in your cells. And if you're able to charge at the cellular level, you're going to be able to carry out those functions, the autophagy functions, much more efficiently and effectively. And one of the things with autophagy, of course, is it finds all the broken amino acids, which I think is brilliant that you had the quality amino acids in the process. And they find those broken amino acids and they try to repurpose them for a more healthy cellular structure. So actually, next time I'm going to do my water fast, I'm going to check with you to see what amino acids you would recommend.
Yeah, yeah. I think it made a huge difference. I was shocked how easy the 3 days were. And
Good.
I'm getting up and making breakfast for the kids. I'm making dinner for the family. So it's not like I was
Yeah.
away from food. I'm like smelling the bacon in the morning with the kids.
Yeah.
Like my wife made pot roast one night, and I'm like, what are you doing to me? God, just amazing grass-fed pot roast on the second night. And she's like, well, deal with it. This was your choice. You volunteed for this, you dummy, figure it out. Um, look,
Love can be such exquisite torture sometimes, can't
that's right.
it?
That's right. Well, walk me through some of the ingredients then, because I think people are probably by now thinking, well, what's in it? What is it?
Oh,
These
sure.
granules. I think it's important for people to know. So what is in that packet?
Yeah. So, first of all, the manufacturing process is closely guarded, and the we've submitted patents around the ingredient composition itself. But the basic minerals are calcium carbonate, which uh, in our case is mined from ancient seabeds in the U.S., and they are incredibly pure. That just basically seashells, I guess is what you're saying, from millennia ago. Um, and other sources then are uh, potassium hydroxide, which is a incredibly strong electrolyte, and potassium chloride, and then magnesium hydroxide.
Mm.
So those are the four basic minerals. And we thought we'd cracked the code when we were able to put them into a crystalline structure that is quite unique and holds those four crystalline materials in and a very strong negative electromotive charge in something that doesn't taste bad.
Yeah, it
So,
doesn't taste like anything.
but we've heard some customers say, I don't think I really like the flavor of this. And I think we've all become accustomed to sugar.
I'm always looking at opportunities to enhance my kids' performance, nutrition, cognition, recovery. So, I've got them taking this and that, just like I mentioned. And a lot of product makers like yourself are like, we haven't done the studies on children. I
Right.
don't suggest that you do this because we don't know. Do you, again, I can edit this out, but I'm curious about if you think that there is a potential benefit to sort of maybe even microdosing, my kids with some of the NION occasionally.
Well, we've first of all of the ingredients are recognized as safe by the Food and Drug Administration, and their highest and purest quality. So they're minerals. They're not, necessarily organics or anything of that sort. So we're quite confident for their safety components. Now, we haven't tested it on women who are in pregnancy, but there's been no indications whatsoever of anything negative that way. And as parents are apt to be, when they found it had some benefits for their athleticism, they insisted that in one case, it was a hockey team, sort of a early young person hockey team. And I don't know if it was psychological or what, but we started letting the kids have NION, and they were just cleaning up the place.
Awesome.
And I don't know. And, when we did our first double blind placebo control study at Montana State, we wanted to deal with people who were young. So the average age was 20 when we were testing. So their mitochondria were at the peak of their game. Normally, you'll say the mitochondria begin to decline at age 30. And when we saw the people we were testing who were older, we saw like unbelievable improvements in function. But when we saw that people at even age 20, at the prime, were seeing significant improvements in their function and their performance and whatnot, it would just stand to reason that younger people would see performance improvements too. And one of the things about negative ions that I like is it tends to improve mood. It's
Mm,
not just your physical performance, but that when your body's working well, you feel good, your mood improves. There's a lot of evidence that that's also the negative ions in your system that improves some of the neurological functions and improves the mood in general. So maybe these guys just felt like, wiping up the ice with the other team, or they just felt good themselves. I don't know, but they really,
interesting.
really performed very, very well.
Let's go there because I think that that's really fascinating. I think that you're right about the fact that when you have the right minerals, when you have the right, when you're feeling grounded, when you're feeling focused, that will you can't help but feel good.
Mm-hmm.
Positive, energetic, happy go lucky, focused, switched on, like you slept really, really well the night before. It's Saturday
Right.
morning and you're going to go do fun stuff during the day. But I would be super interested to hear because mood is such a hard thing to
That's right.
measure,
Yep.
right? That stack of supplements behind me, cognitive enhancers and nootropics. And, I've got alpha lipoic acid and ginkgo and all sorts of other stuff to enhance cognitive states. But it's tough. It's a tough thing to measure. And I'm not talking just about children, but I'm talking about adults here. But mood is a tough thing to quantify because like, yeah, I feel good. Like, well,
Absolutely.
how do
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
measure that? Is it because you have, greater levels of serotonin? Is it because you have, GABA present, whatever? I don't know, but that you're right. There is something else underlying the effect with NION that I actually feel in this moment. And you and I are in a flow state because we're having
Mm-hmm.
novelty and a conversation and talking about cool stuff. But yeah, there is that effect where you feel you feel on top of things. And
Yeah.
and I wonder
Well,
how we can measure that.
yeah. Well, and that's a really, really good point, Sean, because what we're doing now is putting together our next set of protocols for testing NION, having been very clear that it improves mitochondrial function. There are some very specific physiological tests to look at mitochondrial output. But there are other physiological indicators that we should also look at and make that part of our regimen, because our entire approach has been to uh, establish situations where people are under stress with and without NION, and then measure detailed physiological changes that occur. So we could see that people coming to the test with and without NION, if they'd taken NION, their blood pressure was lower, their heart rate was lower, they were more relaxed.
Mm,
Boy, I'd sure like to get a blood draw then to see, if
yeah,
there was a significant difference in serotonin levels or whatever, too.
right.
And then when they went through the exercise regimens and we had different levels of stress, their heart rates remained lower. The volume of oxygen that they needed to take in to complete a certain level of exercise was lower. The entire body was operating more efficiently. And when you would ask them about how they felt, they they said they felt less stressed. They weren't working as hard as the guy next to them while they're doing the same work. So you're spot on here. I think we do need to look at some of the chemical functions that are going on related to mood and stress when we're taking NION. So I think that's going to be one of our next levels with the National Institute of Health studies that we do.
Awesome. Awesome. Cool. What before we take this home, what was there anything that I didn't ask that you think is really really important to share?
Well, Sean, we're kindred spirits in so many ways, and I'm actually looking forward to maybe having Evan, our marketing and social media guy, join you on a run through the neighborhood, and I was also curious about where you get your spring water. Is it in the neighborhood
It's in the
here?
neighborhood. Yeah,
Okay,
it's
okay. You
15
you
minutes
probably
away
know the
from
same
us.
place. Yeah,
Yeah.
very cool, very cool. I just think it's so pleasant to have kindred spirits in the neighborhood, and we can honestly say it's in the water.
Yeah, it is in the water. It is in the water. Yeah. Well, I maybe want to have you back at some point for a round two because there's other areas that I want to get into that we sort of started to touch on real early in our conversation around energy and vibration. I'm big into, you know, performance optimization and biological health as a pathway to spiritual growth,
Right.
to existential improvement. And I know that you've attended and participated in a lot of, you know, cool out there stuff. And so what I'd like to be able to do in our next interview is sort of weave in not only the product but how you sort of think about living and what how you think about living a high quality of life and being your best person because that's the center of the bullseye for me.
Yeah, I'm 100% into that. In fact, my wife and I are going to the San Diego area to meet with a mastermind that we've put together to help become, yeah, on a mental journey that's a high consciousness. So
Awesome.
yeah, I'd love to take that conversation up.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, before I ask my final question, which is a fill in the blank question specifically designed to catch you off guard, where can people, where would you like to send people for more information?
Oh, sure. It's nionhealth.com, NION health.com. NION stands for negative ions, so it's easy to remember. And we've got information there. I think Evan is even putting up copies of our white paper that we're just coming out with that explains how it works. And I think we even may have some of our patents and our double blind placebo controlled studies and an NIH review of our studies all on the site if you really want to get into the weeds and find out about what we have at NION.
Awesome. So here's the last question, and this can be based on really anything. It doesn't have to be specific to the product, and you can elaborate as much or as little as you wish, but please fill in the blank. Everyone would benefit from knowing.
The importance of negative ions and the electromotive potential that exists all around us in the earth, in the air, and in the food we take. That's a simple message, I think.
Awesome. Steve, this was great. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Optimal Performance Podcast.
Sean, a real pleasure. Good seeing you. Bye-bye.